Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Business Stories. Every week, you know me, Dr. LL, Loralyn Mears of Steerus, bringing you all kinds of fascinating guests. This week, somebody that you may have heard of. He's very proud. He's done a lot of things. He's been recognized in Inc. magazine as offering one of the best places to work. Coming live from Denver, Colorado, one of the companies to watch. And he's been named even in Colorado Business Magazine as one of the top 200 privately owned companies. And it goes on and on. There's a lot of accolades that we could dig into, but we're going to let Ryan Estes speak for himself. Ryan, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And what a beautiful intro. Thank you so much.
Well, you've done a lot. I mean, like I like to ask, like, is there anything you don't do? You're even into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You are an instructor. You're this, you're that. You've had a successful exit of your company. Like I'd run out of air talking about all the things that you've done. So how do you identify these days?
How do I identify? Well, I probably identify I got the fidgets. You know what I mean? I got to keep it moving. Ultimately, that's what it is. And I think mostly I'm just a curious person. And so I like to try a bunch of different things. I feel like ultimately I'm kind of a 0 to 1 guy, you know? So when I get to one at anything, I start over with something else at zero because I just love kind of that delta of discovery and exploration and new things.
Do you think that that's part of what attracts people like into this path of entrepreneurship? That a lot of people, over half of us, self-identify as ADHD and chasing that bright, shiny new object syndrome because we like the thrill of discovery. We like the challenge of solving a really thorny problem. And then once we've done it, next, we've already moved on, right?
It could be. I've been diagnosed with some letters over the years, but I choose to see it as kind of like not a disorder, rather a superpower, because some of us are just built for that, finding something new, finding an area that's curious to me that is challenging and hard, is just kind of exciting. And I can measure my own enthusiasm and excitement on a project of like what I'm really into and being honest with myself, or maybe all the entrepreneurs listening to the show is like, trusting yourself and your feeling and going with that. I think probably is a big differentiator, or either that or just like a desire for pain. I don't know. It's one of the two, maybe a combination of both.
Oh, indeed. And as someone who, over the years, like so many other people, when I've looked at it and said, this job or this whatever no longer interests me, I move on, right? Like it's just, it still surprises me. And it's happened, I can't even count the times now because I've pivoted, a few times in my life, reinventing myself more times than Madonna or other people, but there you go. But when I look at it, I start to see a little bit of change, a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of less interest, right? Lower enthusiasm when it comes to doing the thing. And
Yeah.
then it doesn't seem like it takes long after that. Once I just first start recognizing, like, oh, my enthusiasm's waning. And then, like, boom, I switch off, like it's over. Does it
Yeah.
happen to you that abruptly?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does. I think there's kind of a contagion of like a great idea. Now, I'm also kind of person that in a part of understanding yourself, I put certain parameters around myself and my projects. Otherwise, literally, I would be writing ballads in my closet all day because that's probably what I really want to do. So it is like honoring that like feeling, but also know that maybe sometimes the feelings can be deceptive. And maybe not even deceptive. I think they're true, but maybe they can steer you down a path where you're wasting resources. And a lot of times I know I only have a limited amount of resources, whether that's willpower and inspiration or it's time and money. I only have so much, so I do kind of I kind of have a framework to make sure I'm staying in my lane, so to speak. Even though there might be 5 lanes. But, I want to make sure I'm seeing certain validations for those lanes for me to really kind of pursue it. But, that feeling of fun and enthusiasm is a huge part of it. It's an absolute must-have qualifier for something I'm working on for sure.
Oh, I love it. And it's just, this is what's so fun about all of my guests and talking about their journeys on entrepreneurship or small business ownership. And they are different. We get into those sort of semantics with some folks. We're like, no, it's the same. Nah, it's different. But that said, a lot of people go, yeah, I need to have all these different lanes because I recognize in myself that some of them become more intellectually stimulating and others become more financially profitable. So I have different pursuits and different interests depending on which, aspect I want to dig in at the time. If I'm flush with cash, the financially more like interesting or lucrative ones may not be of great interest. But if I'm really wanting to dig in and solve a thorny problem, I'll go down that lane. Is it a lot of that that's been for you, or how has it been since your exit? What changed?
It's probably the same. Maybe my vision has changed. I think for me, it's important to have a very big goal, a humongous goal that is simple enough that I can see it and visualize it clearly. And if I'm lucky, I can pull myself through time and then embody that, you know? So for me, what's a good way to, you know, get in shape? Well, it's maybe working towards general enlightenment, you know. So because in a part of your mental state would be like your physical state. So it's like it's not that I need to run, it's like rather I'm trying to do this really hard thing up here. So I'll share with you my vision if you're curious.
I am.
Okay. Lately, my vision is recording a single microphone solo acoustic album of fingerstyle blues on some remote desert island.
Wow. Okay.
So
Now, how
it's
did these pieces
me.
come together, if I may ask? I didn't mean to talk over you there.
Oh, how's it come together? Well, basically, into to like give a feeling to this, I'm on a beach, there's nobody around. I have a microphone and my guitar, and I'm going to record an album of fingerstyle blues and just singing because you got to have so this is how it comes about. Why that's it probably seems like a pretty simple thing, but ultimately for me to get somewhere and be completely alone, a lot of things had to have gone extremely right. You know what I mean? My college kids' tuition is good. My mortgage is good. My wife is good. My family's are good. My friends are good. I'm good. I'm solid. Not only that, but I've been practicing guitar to a level where I feel like I can do a one take off, one off on a song and rip. On top of that, mentally, physically, emotionally, I need to be in a place where my voice is going to be able to hold that kind of weight and that kind of relaxation. So if I'm stressed out or the business isn't in order or my family's not in order, that's going to come out in my voice. I don't want that. I want it to be able to be lucid and melancholic and dark and full of joy and these kind of things. So that's to say it's a very simple vision, but in order for that to become reality, everything has to work in kind of harmony. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm working towards that moment, and that might be, it's looking maybe 24 months if I'm lucky. Maybe it's 36, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years. But right now, it's a very potent vision that I can really sit in and experience and get everything else that goes with that. All the tasks that require everything to happen to facilitate that, they'll handle themselves because I'm thinking about making this record on the beach.
Wow. Okay. So I want to come back to the importance of vision in 2 seconds. You talked about all of the things, right, that have to happen automatically. Everything has to fall into place. The planets have to align, right? The stars have to sparkle, all this sort of stuff to make it happen, to be ready for that moment where you're recording on the island. You didn't even mention the potential difficulty of finding somewhere on this planet where nobody else is beside you, right?
That's
Like
right.
everybody's everywhere. That's a really big, tough problem.
That's also tough, which means I need extra time to kind of ramble. Again, it's a hard task.
It is not easy. But back to where I was going to go with vision and the importance of that as a founder to not only be a dreamer, but really a visionary to see things that are so unique and give you so much opportunity as well as direction that it forces you to really think about what you're doing and is it aligned with your vision or is it not, to give you that ruthless prioritization so that you keep tracking to whatever that North Star thing that you are following. What do you think of that? And so many founders say, I don't really have a clear vision. How do you address that?
Well, you know, I thought that kind of a vision, kind of they say visionary. I always thought it was kind of like a corny term until I realized that it's like, oh no, the thing that is in my head that I'm working towards, that's what that is. And some people don't have that. Discovering that, like, whoa, I didn't realize that some people don't have that. So I'm not sure about that part. What was the first part of the question?
Well,
I think it's
that if
great.
people, so they don't have a vision and they're not tracking to something, then, what should they do? Like, can they be successful, right? They don't
Oh
have
yeah,
that
yeah.
North Star to follow.
Yeah, kind of talking about like making sure your tasks align with your vision, which is very important. And also another kind of gut check because ultimately I want to do what brings the most leverage to my work that I possibly can. Now, this is going to be different with a lot of different people because some people they want a lifestyle business and they love having their hands in the business and engaging with the customers and like kind of that the daily task of business is what they love about it. And I think that's great. That's awesome. If your vision is something else, then you realize that like you need to remove yourself from a lot of those tasks. Some of the maybe there's ways you can delegate. Maybe there's ways you can, obviously build AI tools to help you kind of get higher leverage with the actual things you need to do. And that just runs all the way up and down the org chart. The tough thing is too is that you have to monitor it all the time because the other part is most founders are just looking for hiring people to replace their own two hands. But a lot of times they really kind of love being in the work, and so they're not going to delegate, they're not going to train their staff, they're not going to create the SOPs because if they're being honest, they really love that component of the work. So what I'll find myself doing is being really good for a quarter of like, okay, I'm delegating all this. We have SOPs, everybody's trained, everything's good, everything's moving. And then I realize I've just created all these other tasks that I'm kind of hoarding and that I'm doing. And it's like, no, all of this now you need to like bring out and delegate to your team. And it never ends because really, I think a job of a founder or a CEO is to kind of be on the very fringe of what's possible, what's capable, how you can get revenue and create new revenue opportunities all the time. So you're always kind of exploring 10 different things. And then when one thing comes into focus, you make that really tight, and then you have to also pass that off again. So it's this constant process, and just something that I'm very conscious of all the time. Particularly, I'm very lucky to have a great team, that will say like, "Hey, make an SOP. I got that," and then I realize like, "Oh, but I kind of love that little thing." But it's like, nope, you're right. Okay, boom, here you create space, and then invariably more tasks come to fill that space.
Right. It's right. It's a law of physics, right? There is no empty space. Now, with respect to your vision of doing a bluesy, single take, single track, right, multi-track in the sense of recording full-length album on a deserted island, does putting it out there and saying it make it real that you are now accountable because you put it out into the universe?
Absolutely. That's a big part of it. When I have the opportunity to talk about it, then I can actually feel it. I want to smell the beach. You know what I mean? So, and that it keeps me aligned with what I'm doing, but also it gives me a lot of enthusiasm and encouragement to keep going. But particularly that vision also kind of fills me with a sense of calm and well-being that I think ultimately is maybe the biggest productivity hack there is like understanding the pace. The tortoise and the hare, the tortoise ends up winning in the end. I have a very hard time relating to that because I'll be the hare from 5 a.m. to midnight every single day. So like at least having a pause where internally I can feel a sense of calm, I can feel a sense of serenity, maybe some equanimity if I'm lucky, just a little touch of the fabric of that. It does wonders as far as just like kind of like the durability of like getting through the days.
As someone who has played guitar for a long time myself, I always loved how melodious it sounded whenever there was dampness in the air because it just made the sound and the guitar and the wood. I played flamenco and classical guitar. It
Ooh,
just
amazing.
made the sound wider. And so I'm envisioning you sitting there and playing and like the moisture coming in and just the whole vibe, right? And it leads me to a next question, which I hadn't planned on asking, but do you think that most entrepreneurs are chasing ultimately that sense of calm at the end that says, check the box, I've made an achievement? Or do you think that most of us are wired to be almost addicted to the adrenaline rush of chasing the idea of solving the problem?
It's the second, without a doubt. And, I'm fortunate to have, friends that are very, very wealthy. I'm fortunate to have friends that aren't, and I interview folks on my podcast all the time that are, by all accounts, very successful people. And at a certain point in the conversation, oftentimes they'll say, you've got an incredible career. You could hang it up. You've done incredible things. What keeps you in it? And they all just kind of dance around the answer. But the truth is, they're in love with the game. Like they're in love with the game, and this is what they do for fun. And I don't think people talk about that enough either, that, the highs and the lows, the deep lows, and like all of the emotional resonance that comes with trying to tackle a big mission is fun. And for some of it's sport, and it's sport at very, very high stakes. Um, but for some reason, we're gluttons for punishment, perhaps.
I guess it's sadists, right, at heart, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
I don't know. But you're right about that because there is a tremendous cost. It comes often at the cost of our personal health and well-being. Many founders I've talked to, myself included, yeah, I've gained how many, whatever, pounds, right? And this and that. Oh, I'm sedentary. Oh, I've got some kind of chronic neuropathy over here because I'm always in this position or whatever. Relationships, right? They've come and gone, all this sort of thing. And yet people do it. We're
Yeah,
compelled.
yeah,
The moth
yeah.
with the flame.
It's crazy. I think it's maybe like also maybe you see behind the curtain a little bit, because all entrepreneurs, the grass is always greener. There's always that nagging voice in your head like, man, maybe I just get a job. Maybe I just go get a job and let somebody else, I'll offload some of this stress and pressure. But it's just a facade, you know. Everybody in every job, there's a feeling of security, but it's an illusion. At least when you're, trying your own projects, you realize how fragile it is. And for me, it keeps the ears pointed. You think about like a bunny, and like a wild bunny has those upright ears, they're very alert, but domesticated bunnies, their ears fall, and I will never be a domesticated bunny. I will always I will always stay alert, and that's just some people are built like that. Some people love that domesticated thing, and that's great. Find a safe job and do it, and that's wonderful. I love that. But I think once you've kind of tasted the other side, there's no turning back.
I have never, ever heard anyone equate entrepreneurship with a domesticated bunny whose ears are flattened, trying to be the antithesis of that. Now that is stuck in my head. Absolutely stuck, Ryan. So, okay. All right. Let's come back to really what you're known for and where you've grown your business for. You talked about podcasting and you kind of glossed over it a little bit, but there's a lot more there because you did create Kitcaster, which was acquired about this time last year. And then you've also got Wildcast, where you've raised over $1 million. So let's talk about what you know about podcasting, how it's shifting, how people should be using it more as a practice than really
Mm.
as a marketing channel. Talk to us about all of that. I know that's a wide open question. Take it anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, for some of us, man, we just don't ever shut up, so you have to hit record. Just might as well record it because you're talking anyway. So, podcasting was a blessing in that aspect for me. But I really feel kind of corny about podcasting broadly, because there's just so many challenges we face as a species on this planet, especially now. And I'm convinced that the only way that we're going to overcome these challenges is if we just talk to each other, is if, we exchange culture, we exchange ideas, we exchange laughs, we just get to know each other where we can, soberly kind of address these situations. Now, this is in stark contrast to like the other kind of media we have out there. Like television is like evil wizards casting spells across the people. Like literally think about it as like Sauron on the mountain, like sending energy to like all the the villagers. I mean, it's just awful. I mean, social media also bad. It's just like people are sniping at each other. Now, the algorithm gets a lot of like negative criticism, but I kind of like TikTok now. It's just kind of fun. I just watch like sports highlights and skateboard videos and stuff, which is cool. It's kind of gotten away from like the really socially negative, or we'll just say net negative, But I feel like podcasting is the exact opposite. I believe it's a total net positive, and it kind of highlights the commonalities that we have as humans, which is that if you're given the opportunity to meet somebody for the first time, we're meeting each other for the first time. We don't go straight to the places we disagree. Rather, we look for common ground immediately, and that's across all countries, all languages, all cultural divides, and it's incredible. Through working in podcasting, I talk to people in Tel Aviv. I talk to people in Singapore. I talk to people in Australia, in Europe, everywhere, and everybody's kind of the same. Now, of course, I'm talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, so we're all cut from the same cloth. But I really feel that like podcasting is important on a very large level, for human thriving ultimately.
And I want to address that about the algorithm. I had to pull back from social media, TikTok and Instagram Reels specifically, because I love looking at dog videos. I'm one of those. I'm
Yeah.
not a cat video person. Sorry if I've just alienated half my audience, but there we go. But I watched these dog videos, and then over time, so many of them were like, oh, this poor emaciated dog was rescued from here and that, here, give money, donate. And it was just, I couldn't go on my social media because it was just inundated with all these images of poor animals just begging for help and begging for, like, I couldn't do it. Like mentally, I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God. So I had to retrain the algorithm. I want to see cute little dogs cuddling their owners. That's what I want to see, right? Because that's how I exhale. But I want to come back to what you said, because what you're really talking about is that podcasting's reshaping, right? How communication is actually supposed to happen, not just in human relationships, but in business. And
Mhm.
maybe that's the magic of podcasting, celebrity, whatever, interest, self-serving interests aside. But, there we go.
I think you're totally right, and a part of the beauty of podcasting is it's intentional. I think we've all had this experience where you realize that your media diet is more valuable than your caloric diet as far as like your well-being. We really have to be intentional and selective as best we can. And the problem is that usually when we curl up with our phone, we're just in kind of a theta state and we're just like, oh, just feed me while I can just recover here for a second. But particularly when you are in that kind of theta state, kind of a sleepy state, you're particularly vulnerable for a certain kind of messaging, which is why all that stuff goes viral. But with podcasting, every time you go to listen to a podcast, you're intentionally making that decision. So you're subscribing to a podcast that you believe will help you, and then chronologically, you're going to see all those selections, so you get to choose. So I have whole playlists for business where it's like, okay, if I'm feeling a certain kind of way, I'm going to these because these are going to give me absolute rocket fuel just to get my whole attitude turned around 5 or 10 minutes, or if I'm looking for that kind of theta state relaxation, I have a whole list of those kind of podcasts where I can like really get into it intentionally and be like, oh, this is the things I want. It's not the things that everybody else likes that the algorithm knows I'm going to eat, it's the things that I'm deciding. So, I think creating that I think having that in availability for our diet is absolutely magical. And it really, I mean, I can't even like underestimate how transformative podcasting has been in my life, not only professionally, but just like giving me all the information I ever wanted for free. So it's incredible. It's really cool, and it's ubiquitous now, but like if I have the chance to be grateful for it, I should take it.
Oh, that's wonderful, right? You really, I think, dialed into what's important. And this feeds kind of to my next question about sense of purpose. So you've got everything from, oh, founder of media tech, this, that, martial arts artist, you've got music director, da da da, recording artist, all of this sort of stuff, podcaster. How does all of this fit together and fuel like your sense of purpose rather than, as we talked about it earlier in the show, label you as like entrepreneur? Because you don't strike me as someone seeking labels. In fact, you're trying to eschew them. So, where do you find your sense of purpose when you're sort of all these different things?
Purpose. Boy, I don't know. I think ultimately, like, affecting large scale change is great, but that's like a subtle shift in the rudder, which is also to say you got to be steering the boat, So for me, like my purpose is pretty clear. It's like, I got two teenage kids and a beautiful wife, I've been married to for 21 years. Like that's my purpose. You know what I mean? Is to make sure that well, first, that I do my best not to do any harm. You know, a lot of
Good.
times
Start
people are,
there. Yeah.
a lot of times people are shooting a big, big mission, but they leave just a trail of rubble underneath them. So kind of coming from first principles, it's like, okay, I want to move very quickly. I want to move very fast, but I don't want to do that at the expense of what's really important to me. So to not do harm first is a good first step. And then from there, how can I be helpful? And then how can I be useful? And then if you're lucky enough, how can I affect that at scale? So if I'm looking at purpose, really, it's just going to start with like all the small things every day.
Now, you didn't say it, but you are known for trying to bring kindness forward, right? Bring kindness into business. And you talked about like how at scale, how do we do this? When all the sort of algorithms and everything out there and the what society rewards, right, is transactions. How many of this or how many of that has happened, right? How many likes, how many follows, how many shares, reposts, blah, 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 all this stuff. But you're saying, hey, let's pull back and focus more on kindness and bringing that forward. What do you say to all of that? What's the importance behind that?
Yeah, I think a lot about this in business, kind of what's the differentiation between kindness and empathy and compassion and justice and, kind of some pretty lofty ideas, and there's nuance in there. So I think generally speaking, being kind in the workplace just means like being honest and for just intentional with what's happening with any kind of relationship within the place. I think also being kind means like not leveraging relationships. Like I'm kind of loath for the people that are like, we're a big family. It's like, man, I can barely even stand my family. My family seems to take advantage of each other all the time. Like, we're not that. We're not that. So we're this other thing. We're friendly, but we're not friends. We're loving, but we're not a family. So I think for me, a lot of times it's important up front to be like, hey, this is kind of the parameters of our relationships. And kind of in the spirit of how you do anything is how you do everything. It's like, we're going to put these relationships in a certain container of the way we act. And if we get in the habit of that, maybe we can bring that to our other relationships, because oftentimes I feel like professional relationships are the ones that are maybe the strongest and maybe the most principled of like treating people fairly and trusting and having confrontations when it's necessary. Things don't get swept under the rug. You can't really ghost somebody at work. It's kind of a sandbox, really, I think, for our other social relationships. So, kindness, I believe, is just probably a good way to start to navigate that minefield, because it's difficult and there's no real right way to do it. But if you begin with a spirit of kindness, I think at least your head's in the right place. Again, like, let's not do harm first. I've definitely been in those the opposite of that, where you have vindictive malice and people are
Yes.
gunning for each other, and that's horrible. Those kind of political situations are terrible and are really deteriorate people's will to live. So
Indeed. Many of us have been on the receiving end of that level of right, clever spite, right? And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just, it's horrific. And my mantra, I'm always saying, be kind to people and pets. And same thing. You said, don't leave rubble. I said, like, don't leave bodies in your wake, right? You can't do it that way. You can't succeed at the expense of everybody else. That's not how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Now,
One
that
thing I'd add to that too is for a practice is, it's not meek. It's not meek either. Like there's a great quote that I love that's like, it's better to be a warrior in the garden than the gardener in the war. You know what I mean? So understanding your potential for violence, however that might be, I think is really important to have a relationship with, because then it truly is a decision for kindness, because you could also make the decision for the opposite, viciousness, and I'm not talking about like physical violence or things like that, but like you really get a strong differentiation. So like working your body to the absolute extreme, working on skills that martial arts skills, boxing, wrestling, all these kind of things where you're really learning like how strong you are, but also how fragile you are at all times. And then those gestures of kindness and those gestures of malice are seen in a completely different kind of threatening scenario, which ultimately kind of becomes a metaphor for everything else you're doing. So, I think it's important to that if you're developing kindness it goes hand in hand with developing a relationship with violence. As contradictory as that seems, but they're really two sides of the same coin.
Do we need to see those polar opposite sides of the coin to realize what our role in all of it is to drive that intentionality?
Potentially, potentially to see how they're opposites but the same, I think is important because that's just kind of like the duality nature of the illusionary reality that we live in that exists all over the place. So it's like if you're trying to get to one extent of the mean, you're never going to do that without bringing that shadow with it.
Ooh, let's dig into that because that's a perfect segue to my next question. And I swear, audience, I did not cue Ryan up. So you've got your course and program here and podcasting around AI for founders, right? And you really talk about the podcasting philosophy, how founders need to bring their stories forward, but it's also the whole thing where now our stories are being interpreted, right? AI systems are compressing what we are saying, they are categorizing it, they are in some senses, right, almost putting words in our mouth. And I'm not even talking about the fake AI and all the rest of that, which is literally doing that. But I want to dig at what do you advise leaders to do with respect to their level of responsibility for making sure that the narrative that they're creating about themselves and their companies is as close to factual as possible?
Yeah. Well, factual is going to mean that it's clumsy. So I believe that if you're a founder, you're a CEO, you're responsible for your livelihood, your family's livelihood, your staff's livelihood, investors, your board, everybody, that you have to put the company on your back and you have to go out there and make yourself publicly known everywhere. That would be podcast interviews. That would be your LinkedIn post. That would be contributing to the beast of social media. That would be writing. That would be taking it to the stage in conferences. That's getting out there, shaking people's hands on dinners. Like you have to do that. And honestly, if you can't do that, then you should step away. You should either have a co-founder and put all that responsibility on them, or you should remove yourself as CEO and put somebody in there who's actually willing to roll the dice and risk their entire reputation on this. Because ultimately, people are looking at you to be kind of the responsible one and to be that leader. And if you can't do it, you should get out of there.
I believe that some entrepreneurs would push back. Several of the ones in that I've mentored, like I feel the same. You got to be there, you got to be out there. But they push back and say, like, I'm introverted. Doing all that, being everywhere, like it's exhausting. I don't really think I need to do that. But what you're saying is the exact opposite, that in fact, if you don't do it, thou shalt perish.
You definitely will, and you deserve to. Because people are looking to people. And I really relate to this honestly because I, was very public for a while, and I was like, you know what, I want to be behind the scenes guy, and I did that for 5 years and just kind of shrank back and felt great, and it was an absolute mistake. I definitely should not have done that. Not for the projects I was working on, but also not for myself. Ultimately, every business has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the only thing that you're bringing with you is yourself. So if you're building your personal brand, for lack of a better term, then you're not connected to one particular project. Sure, you put all the marketing effort into the project, but really it should be you. You're the entry point for that. And I totally get it. Some people just actually can't do it. You know what I mean? I mean, I talk to a lot of people that are much more comfortable with glowing rectangles than talking to human beings, you know? And I totally understand. What I'm saying is that you should not be leading the company then. That you need to make the decision to say that the person that should be leading this organization is somebody who is at least willing, they may not be comfortable, but at least willing to put themselves out there and make that sacrifice. Everybody's introverted. Nobody wants to look like a fool, but you have to be willing to like sometimes step on your own toes. It's absolutely mandatory, especially in 2026.
Ah, amen. Now, that said, where can people find you, learn about AI for founders, hear about it, all the rest of that stuff, Ryan? How can people get in touch with you or find you?
You bet. You can search me on LinkedIn, no problem. I'm pretty active there. But I would like people to go to aiforfounders.co. It is kind of the home of my newsletter, my podcast. I do workshops. Everything is totally for free. This is really just kind of a media company where I'm figuring out like how leaders of AI companies are structuring their companies. We get into all the specifics of like their revenue, how much they've raised, where they found investors, all that good stuff, plus their personal stories. It's really just a resource for founders and entrepreneurs that are kind of figuring out how to leverage AI in their businesses and just looking for new creative things that people are up to.
All right, so everybody heard it here. You can find Ryan Estes, right? AIforfounders.co. But before you go, I've got our signature question. So if we got to look in that Denver, Colorado closet of yours, and there was a pair of footwear in there that personified who you, Ryan Estes, is and all that you represent, what are we looking at?
It's the best question ever. I love
It's my
it.
signature. 300 plus times we've asked it, and the answer's never the same.
Rattleskin cowboy boots.
Oh, I didn't have you pegged for that. Interesting.
I'm
Okay.
Colorado boy.
Okay. I love it. And so why are you, I guess, associated or say personified by these rattleskin cowboy boots? Not just because you're from Colorado. What else? What else makes them you?
Well,
What makes them you?
I got a certain relationship with rattlesnakes a little bit, but also, I'm a sportsman and I mean, if you looked up Coloradan in the dictionary, you see a picture of me in a flannel in my pickup truck. You know what I'm saying? Like I am the
You're that
stereotypic
guy.
Coloradan. So I like Western culture and I also like fashion, believe it or not. And so I'll go through phases of like what I want my fashion to be. And the one I'm really stuck on right now is this idea of like a Navajo Bruce Wayne. So if Batman didn't live in Gotham City, but he lived on the Navajo reservation, but he's still Bruce Wayne, so he's like kind of swaggery, but like he's got the Southwest energy, maybe like a wool coat with a beautiful print that's all black. So I'm trying to gather these items that will make me feel like Navajo Bruce Wayne. And the rattleskin boots, I mean, it's just chef's kiss. And I get a little bit of attention when I wear those out. I'm like, oh, nice boots. I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you.
There you go. Add a little, blue turquoise lariat to that, the look, and then you got the whole thing right going. And it's so funny. I love when I ask this question because everybody drops their guard down, and people always look to their feet. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's the things I always wear. It's these, right? They're not in my closet. They're always on my feet, right?"
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wear mostly UFOs, so I mean, whatever that's worth.
Oh, there we go. So with that, Ryan Estes, we wish you continued success in all that you're doing, guiding the rest of us in podcasting and leading AI companies. And just thank you so much for being on our show today. And we can't wait to hear that album that comes out, you recording a nice little Dirty Blues album on some deserted island somewhere.
Laura Lynn, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.